So, hi everybody. My name is Robby Moore, and I'm an artist here in Beckley, and I work with Beckley Arts Center. And a long time ago, I worked with West Virginia Dance Company. I've known Toneta all of my life, and I'm very proud and excited to talk with three other artists who also have a history with the dance company and have known Toneta for a long time as well. So why don't we start by just going around and introducing ourselves? So, Dan?
Yes, my name's Dan Bailey. I'm a musician here in Beckley and basically a guitar player, but I have done extensive studio experience, and I currently have a studio. It's called Eldridge Productions. And I have been affiliated with the dance company since 1977.
Nice. And that was when the dance company was founded.
That's correct.
Yeah. All right, Doris.
Hi, I'm Doris Fields, also known as Lady D. I'm a singer and performer here in Beckley, and I've been associated with the dance company, of course, through Theater West Virginia since 1997, I believe it was. I started working for them and met Toneta and so many great dancers that have come through there since that time.
That's great. And Becky?
I'm Becky Kimmons, and I'm from Beckley originally. Grew up, spent the first 11 years of my life in Mabscott, and that's a very dear memory to me in so many ways, very important to me. But I finished graduate school at the University of Iowa in 1977, and I needed a place to land for a little while and figure out which way I was going to go. So I went back to Mabscott, where my dad still owned that little coal company house. And I moved in there, and the only jobs, there were two jobs available. One was watering flowers for the bank, and the other was as promotion and advertising director for this place called Theater West Virginia, actually at the time it was Theater Arts of West Virginia. And so I had a background in promotion and advertising, and even though I had just graduated with this degree in fiction writing from the University of Iowa. And I kind of wanted that flower watering job so I could have all my days, to write. But I got that job at Theater Arts of West Virginia, and it really changed my life. I didn't expect it to. I didn't want it to, but it did. And that's when I met, it was 1977 for me, too. I just graduated from Iowa and came back and met that wonderful, wonderful group of people, Toneta and Barbie and John Urich and just the whole host of folks up there that created that art scene in Beckley. And I'm a performer, I'm a singer, I'm an emerging artist. I have time now to indulge my sort of artistic impulses. I'm just doing all kinds of stuff and showcasing it in my Airbnb in Charleston.
Very nice. Well, we're all artists, and none of our primary arts is dance, like Toneta's and the dance company. So I've been fortunate enough to work with the dance company in an artistic way, and all of you have as well. So tell me what that has been like, learning about the medium of dance and specifically working with the dance company. Collaborating on projects that are dance focused.
Well, I learned that that really dancers count in eighths, not fours. And it was exciting, because you see dancers moving, and basically as a musician, you're always thinking, I'd love to play to that. I'd love to do something with that. I'd love to compose a piece that they would dance to. And, Toneta has given me the chance to do that, which I have actually done. When I first started with the dance company in 77, the dances were performed to live music. Two other musicians, Dan Manning and John Urich, were there, and we worked as a team. And there were a couple pieces that were recorded music, But by and large, most everything was done live. And that was the first time that I had seen that. And I didn't realize at the time what a unique and different thing that was. That most all dance performances, unless you get to maybe New York City or something like that, or some big city, they are all done to recorded music. But we toured the state, we did schools, and we played live Appalachian pieces, classical type pieces, all sorts of music. And it was a joy. It was really a joy.
What's been your experiences, Becky and Doris, working with dance?
Doris, you want to go?
Well, I worked with Dan as well as Toneta on the piece just recently. I believe it was early last year that we worked on the power of love versus the love of power. And no, it was year before last. Yeah, this is hopefully post-pandemic now. It was really interesting because, you know, everybody has a vision. Artists always have a vision of what they want for an end product. And I talked to Toneta a couple of times before we did this, and she explained what she wanted to happen. And of course, because you don't have that same vision, you don't quite see it yet. And I got into the studio with Dan, and I wasn't sure exactly, you know, how I should be looking at this. And so he explained a couple of things. And so we, you know, collaborated. And then later, you know, after a couple of months, and when it was on stage and I saw it, it was like, that's what she wanted, you know, and that's like, to me, the power of artistry and creating. When people collaborate, when artists get together and contribute their own talents and their take on things, and then you see it put together, I mean, it's just amazing to me. And I was really happy to get the opportunity to do something like this. You know, I hope I can do it again in the future. But Toneta and her dancers are so talented and very artistic. And that piece was just amazing. I'm still, you know, kind of in awe of the fact that I got to be part of it and hear my voice behind these dancers.
She's talking about the Cole Porter classic, You Do Something to Me.
Yeah.
And so we recorded it, and it was done in just like a guitar, bass, drum, very simple style, and sounded very nice. And then Toneta came in and decided to massacre it. So the whole idea was to twist it around, you know, with recording. You got the digital recording these days. You can do all kinds of things with sound files. You can slow them down, speed them up, change the pitch of them, all kinds of things like that. So she basically wanted us to take this sonic painting that we had done and throw a bunch of paint on it, black paint on it. And that's what we did.
Wow. Well, Toneta and I have always been on pretty much the same wavelength. When we first met, we had many deep conversations back in 1977 and continuing, you know, through the years about this culture. She's very much a product of Southern West Virginia, so am I. I care very deeply about this place, West Virginia, and so does Toneta. And neither of us could ever quite leave it. It was my thought that I would leave. When I went back in 1977, I wanted to leave. I was trying to figure out how to get out again. I'd been out. But here I am in West Virginia still, 40 years later, and very glad that I stayed here. I've made a life here, and I've made a life pretty much out of examining this culture and presenting the culture and presenting it to outsiders. That was my career. And now that I'm no longer doing media relations, Toneta and I talked about what is the essence of, you know, many of us, and all of us West Virginians, we think about this a lot, whether we express it, but what is the essence of being a West Virginian? Why is it so important to us that that we explain ourselves. So Toneta has done this so beautifully through the medium of dance. And way back when we were all young, and I took some dance classes with Toneta, I developed a very keen appreciation of what she does and how she does it. And I know that that's not my medium. I'm awfully glad that she does it and does it so beautifully. And then she can conceive of these movement pieces, art in movement, that tell a story in a way that compounds the art, the impact on the senses. So I was very pleased when Toneta asked me to, if our group Bare Bones, I sing in an a cappella trio, and she wanted to have our live music incorporated in a piece that was about coal mining. And I'm wondering how many dance companies have ever taken on the subject of the coal mining culture and presented something as visceral and deeply impacting as what the West Virginia Dance Company did. So we sang, my a cappella group does a lot of different things, but one of the things that we do is some old-time gospel music, like is prevalent in old-time West Virginia. So we did some of that, and then I went to Dan's studio, and I got to just do this vocalese thing that was a background piece for movement. And like Doris, it was just so amazing to hear my voice used in that way, and I loved it. It was really a rush. To cap it all off, we then went up to perform live for the final performance of that piece, the coal mining piece, and we did it at the Woodrow Wilson. What do they call that? Performing Arts Center.
Yeah, the high school. It's an auditorium there at the high school.
Right, and it's also a public performing space. It's a beautiful theater. So we got to do that in that space. It was a memorial for John Urich, and I brought my mother and my sister up from Charleston. I've lived in Charleston now since 1980. And I brought my mom up. My mom's a Beckley girl, and in fact, she was part of that early Beckley art group. She was in the basement painting back in the 50s. So Mom and Sarah and I went back to Beckley for this performance. I was performing, and my mom and my sister were in the audience. And they were so deeply moved after the concert and after the performance. My mother grabs me and she says, "Why didn't I know about this? How come nobody knows about this?" She said, "Everybody needs to see this." So that was pretty much summed it up. It was very powerful.
Well, I think each of you talked a little bit about staying here in Beckley and staying in West Virginia and the importance of the arts here. I'll say I'm so happy that all of you have dedicated your lives and stayed here to bring the arts here. I think something that all three of you have in common with the dance company is that you're so distinctly West Virginian, but you're unique and you break the typical stereotype, or especially the stereotype from outside of West Virginia. But I think even just West Virginians, who we know that we're more complex than how we're sometimes portrayed outside of our borders, you stand out even more. And I think that's something that the dance company does so beautifully. And so tell me, I want to talk a little bit about and hear what your perspective is of that importance of having a professional modern dance company right here in Beckley, what that means to Beckley, Southern West Virginia, the state. Can you all talk a little bit about that?
I think the main thing about the dance company that I've seen through the years is that they basically they stay pertinent, not just to West Virginia, but what's happening socially around the country. And I think really Toneta has a way of wanting to bring her art to West Virginians, to West Virginians in a way that they will see their culture maybe differently or appreciate it more. Mm-hmm. And, sometimes I think one of the things that art does, and I'm not going to get into a big thing about art, it allows you to see sometimes your own life and your own culture through a different set of eyes, in a different way, and you come away appreciating it more. But I appreciate the fact that Toneta is she really relates to what's going on now, and she's always at the forefront fighting that battle. Always.
Yeah.
So my hat's off to her.
Yeah, I think, Toneta, she definitely stays relevant, and you can see that in the pieces that they do. I know she doesn't choreograph every piece, but I really appreciate the fact that they cover a lot of ground, and you don't see that with a lot of dance companies, I don't believe. I mean, not that I have followed a lot of dance companies, but I really like the pieces that she's done in the past on dances from cultures around the world. And like Dan said, I believe one of her missions seems to be to let West Virginians see other cultures and see the comparisons and how they relate to those cultures, that those cultures are somewhat like our own, that we're more the same than we are different. And the dance company does it in such a beautiful way. And I remember thinking, particularly at the performance where our piece was presented, that this dance company here in West Virginia is as good as anything you would see in New York or Los Angeles or anywhere. And they're here in West Virginia, and West Virginians seem to have a knack for not appreciating what they have until it's gone. And I think the dance company is like a treasure here in West Virginia, and they really don't get the recognition that they deserve, because they really are great ambassadors for West Virginia. And if more people outside the state could experience them, I think it would really, help to put this area in Southern West Virginia, especially, on the map.
Uh, it's interesting to me how many West Virginians don't think of themselves, they don't relate necessarily to the arts unless they're an artist themselves. But I'm not sure, I don't know, does Beckley think of itself as an art place? Would you say that they do, Robby?
I don't know that Beckley does. I do. I had a realization. It's probably been about 5 years ago or so, but I started reminiscing and thinking of all of my classmates that I graduated with, and just the sheer number of fellow students and classmates who, even if they don't pursue the arts, they were just extremely talented, and they were, musicians and dancers. And then when I was in high school, I discovered theater, and so going into the theater department or artists, visual artists, that is, and that sort of made me look at Beckley, look at the bigger scope of Beckley, and I thought, man, if we had so many just in my class, and then once I started looking out and seeing artists like all of you, and thinking about Toneta and the dance company being founded here in Beckley, all of these longtime institutions like the Art Center having a huge entity like Tamarack, I feel like Beckley is sort of just, it is sort of saturated in the arts, but I don't know that we have that as our identity.
Think of yourselves that way. Well, Beckley has a really long history of being a center for the arts. When I was a little girl and they started the outdoor theater, people were so excited about that outdoor theater. And I remember the grand opening of the theater. My mother and my dad and my aunt and uncle, they got dressed up to the max, and they went out to see that first show. And there were stories in the newspaper and, all that. talk, all the excitement. And then I think about Emma Beard's dance school. I studied dance when I was a little kid. My mother had me in dance class. And so my memories, and of course she was in the Beckley Art Group. And before I went to school, she took me with her when she would do her plein air sessions. And so my earliest memories of Beckley are all wound up with artistic endeavors. And I think of Beckley, I remember the beautiful architecture in Beckley that my mother called attention to. You know, I always had a very, well, maybe it's sentimental now, but the arts are extremely important, and Beckley's position in West Virginia as an art center has been extremely important. Think about the dancers that Beckley has sent to New York City. I mean, that's remarkable. So I would like for us to learn to embrace the artistic side of ourselves. And I think it's coming because of things like the West Virginia Dance Company.
Yes, you mentioned Theater West Virginia as well. I think we all have history with Theater West Virginia. That's actually where I met Doris, and then that was the first time I worked professionally with Toneta. In some aspect, I was just an intern in the costume shop, but I was still working with the dancers. And when you think about that, I think about how many artists who come from around the world who met here to create pieces of art, and that we've all met and worked with, had the opportunity to work with, and some have stayed. It's really kind of amazing once you start thinking about it like that.
Yes.
I used to, I was a little boy and I just started playing the guitar. And I remember I was out at Little Beaver Lake, and Tom Dennis, who was an actor in the show, Becky remembers Tom Dennis.
I know Lisa Dennis, his daughter. She's
Harley Davidson. And all of a sudden, as this little boy who's in the hills, it just let me know that there are different people out there. Maybe there's an alternative view on life. Maybe there's something else going on.
Oh, yeah. And there are these places all around West Virginia where these remarkable people are. And the thing about it, when I think about growing up in Mapscott and the people on my street growing up there, what a variety of folks there were, and how smart and funny they were. So, yeah, then you have some people like Dennis coming in and kind of turning you on to these possibilities of thinking differently about things.
Well, maybe I don't have to sell shoes or work in the coal mines or do something. Maybe it's okay to be an artist. Maybe it's okay to do something different. And that's the thing,
Well, yes. Of course, the issue of making a living as an artist then becomes...
Well, that's a whole another thing there.
Yeah.
Another thing.
Yeah.
So I had a good fortune of Toneta visiting one of my exhibitions once, and she just really enjoyed one of my paintings, and she took that painting and, well, she asked me if she could take the painting, the image of it, and improv, have her dancers improv about the painting, which I said yes, of course, because I'm down for any kind of collaboration and artistic wise. And it was so interesting, and she invited me to one of their classes where they were going to be further improving on this piece. And so I said yes to that, and I showed up with my sketch pad, of course, because I'm a painter and drawer, and I thought, okay, I'm going to experience this, and this is how I can relate to it. So, and that's comforting for me, having my sketch pad and pencil here. So I show up and I sit in the corners, so not to bother anyone, and I begin to sketch. And then Toneta says, "Oh, no, what are you doing? Get up here. I invited you to be a part of this." And so I don't know, I guess, I mean this in the best sense of the word, but she sort of tricked me into dance. And so I guess the first part of this question is, has she ever tricked you into getting up and enjoying modern dance? But the real question is, how did you find your sort of your core arts, whether that's singing or songwriting or music? How did you find that collaboration with modern dance?
Well, I think I spoke to that just a little while ago. As a musician, when you see people dance and move, I never consider myself a dancer, although we kids, we grow up and we dance. We go to dances and we do things. But just to be a musician and to see people move and to see good dancers, it's like you want to contribute to that. You'd like to do something that would forward that impulse because it's so dynamic and it's so exciting. And so I remember seeing a bunch of young dancers. My daughter was a dancer, and she danced. And I remember seeing these young girls dance. I'd really love to compose a piece. I'd love to just come up with some energetic, dynamic piece that these gals could dance to. And then later on, I got with the dance company, Toneta, and she gave me the chance to actually come up with some pieces for them. And it was really exciting because it takes you places you've never thought you could go. It took me places that, as basically a guitar player, I never knew that I could go. Very cool.
Well, when I was younger, of course, I loved to dance, and then I got out of that as I got older. And then when I came to Theater West Virginia, of course, my interaction with Toneta was, everybody in the cast had to dance. And the thing I loved about Toneta was she sort of met you where you were. So she always made you feel comfortable about the movements, and she didn't try to push you too hard, into something that you couldn't do or weren't comfortable with. But she was able to do things that served the piece, as well as make you feel like you were a part of a greater group of dancers, like you actually were a real dancer, like the dancers with the dance company. And it was just so much fun being out there and doing that. But no, she hasn't tricked me into doing anything yet.
Maybe the trick for me, it wasn't a trick. It was like an awareness, an eye-opening that movement has art to it. And then to start seeing the grace of the beauty in everybody's movement and how human beings move. And what Toneta does is develop, there's a vocabulary of that movement. And if to hang out with Toneta in the dance company is to understand how they take this raw material of anyone's human movement and turn that into something that has meaning. And it's a beautiful, an amazing thing for anybody to realize that their entire being is the stuff of art.
Before we go, just so Dane has enough, if you all didn't get to say something about the piece that you worked on, or you'd like to say something additional, maybe we can do that now.
Well, I'll start off, I guess. It was, like Doris says, Toneta has a very definite, she has a definite outline of how she wants things to go. And so it was really a joy working with her to achieve her vision of how this movement piece is going to impact the audience and make them understand the emotional depth of what it is to live in the cold culture. And the music, she used the music very artfully to increase that emotional impact. So it was just nothing but joy to sing and to use the stuff of my cultural experience to broaden and deepen the dance experience.
Well, I think Toneta, she knows how to collaborate and she knows how to bring together different mediums to fulfill the vision that she has. And I really appreciate that about her, and the fact that, how we sort of get to the same place through different paths. Like, I can write from, just hearing somebody say something, a phrase that sticks in my mind, and then I've got to write a song about it. And to know that Toneta can think of movement, from headlines or concepts or feelings or, social issues, that's this, creativity at its highest level. And like I said before, I was just really happy to be a part of it. And, I hope I can do that again, because that's the type of collaboration I would like to keep doing with other people outside of what I actually do. So, she's a great source and a great treasure for Beckley and West Virginia. So I hope that, people will begin to recognize her and the dance company even more, because we've got something here that, a lot of places don't have. And I love Toneta.
I just thought of one thing that I hadn't mentioned. Toneta had a dance. She called me out to see the dancers rehearse, and I watched the dance they were doing, and there was no music to it. It was just a series of movements, and she filmed it. And I actually composed a piece to go with the dance after the dance was already planned. So all the steps were there, and the music that I did was after the fact, which I think is probably backwards of the way a lot of things are done like that. But it was a unique thing. Fun.
Well, I want to thank all of you for joining me and talking about the dance company, West Virginia Dance Company, and Toneta today. It's been a joy, and just thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You do something to me, something that simply mystifies me. Tell me, why should it be you have the power to hypnotize me?
all lose our charms in the end. But square cut or pear shaped, these rocks don't lose their shape. Diamonds are a girl's best friend.
(1436). Isota Nogarova is said to be the first major female humanist due to her influential literary work, Dialogue on the Equal or Unequal Sin of Adam and Eve. 1777. The Continental Congress asks Mary Catherine Goddard to publish the Declaration of Independence for distribution. 1850. Sarah Grimke produces the first coherent argument by an American for the emancipation of women. 1860. In an act of subversion, Emily Dickinson opens new possibilities with her creative, ungendered poetry. 1866. Elizabeth Cady Stanton, Susan B. Anthony, and Frederick Douglass found the American Equal Rights Association.
You do something that simply mystifies me. Tell me why should it be you have the
1903. For her work in discovering radium, Marie Curie is the first woman to receive a Nobel Prize.
you do.
1933. As Secretary of Labor, Frances Perkins becomes the first woman in the U.S. to hold a cabinet position.
Something that simply mystifies me.
1953. Rosalind Franklin leads the way to the discovery of the double helix structure of DNA.
Tell me why should it be
1960s. Dr. Gladys May West works to develop satellite geodesy models that lead to the GPS that are used by billions of people the world over.
you have the
Women of NASA achieve out-of-this-world feats of science, engineering, and mathematics in an industry dominated by men. Dorothy Vaughan, Kitty Joyner, Jeanette Sissom, Catherine Heyer, Catherine Pedrew, Mary Jackson, Melba Roy, Annie Easley, Nancy Grace Roman, Ellen Ochoa, Margaret Hamilton, Kalpana Chawla, Pearl Young, Sally Ride, and Katherine Johnson.
you do. You have the
1993. Maya Angelou becomes the first female inaugural poet in U.S. history. 1997. Madeleine Albright becomes the first female U.S. Secretary of State. 2018. Donna Strickland wins the Nobel Prize for Physics, Frances Arnold in Chemistry, and Nadia Murad for Peace. 2019. computer scientist Dr. Kate Bauman is credited with the first successful photograph of a black hole situated 500 million trillion kilometers from Earth.
Should it be? You have the power to hypnotize.